All right, hey, all right. This is for the folks not taking the test. And so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to watch the whole interview. Right, 18 minutes. There it is, right there. So you can just click that right there. You can let's see. I typed in Joe Biden interview Morning Joe, and I'd watch the whole thing. Okay, um, and then before you listen to what I think of it, give me a paragraph about what you think. Did he answer the questions? What does it say about Me Too? What does it say about the Me Too movement? This is the Joe Biden candidacy meeting the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement meeting the Democratic Party's nominee for President of the United States. Okay? And whether or not you thought it was effective, whether or not you think this helped him or hurt him, whether or not, how this makes Biden look, how this makes the Me Too movement look. And kind of go from there. All right, and then I'm going to talk about what I think here in a second. So don't listen. Stop. Watch it. Put what you think. And then, hit play again, and I'll tell you what I think. And then after you listen to what I think, find an article about it. See what the author's assessment of what all this means is. Okay. All right. So here it comes. Here's mine. Here's what I thought. I thought he was awful. I just thought he was absolutely awful. I felt like he came across as a nice guy, strangely enough. He was very polite and, wasn't confrontational. But my gosh, he can't string a sentence together. He can't put a period on a sentence. You had this long back and forth where the interview where he's saying, check like the congressional records. And she says, yeah, but you got all these records at the University of Delaware. Why can't people check them too? And he says, well, something like that wouldn't be there. And so she says, well, if it's something like that wouldn't be there, it wouldn't hurt to check them, would they? So why can't you just check them? Why can't you check both? And so then he says, well, I want them to check congressional records, but not these, because they wouldn't be there. I don't know what else you want me to tell you. And she says, well, if it wouldn't be there, what's it going to hurt to check the records? And he's a terrible debater. He cannot think on his feet. Either there's something there that's going to get him in these Delaware records, or he just can't think on his feet. And then, what really drove the point home for me was the rest of the interview. So, the first 10 minutes or so is about this Tara Reade accusation. But then the rest of it is about COVID, and how Trump's handled it and that sort of thing. And he was confused, and he thought 600,000 people had died. At that moment, it was only 60,000, it's up to 67,000. It's going up fast. I respectfully disagree with those who say, it's just the flu. It's proven to just be the flu. But that's a side thing, he thought 600. He said 600,000 people. It's been a Vietnam War. He thought it had been a Civil War. So he got confused on the facts. He couldn't put a period on anything he said. Every sentence had like 5 thesis statements in it, and he just kind of desperately looking for the interviewer to interrupt him so he can stop talking. And the longer it went, the more tired he got, and this is what would happen every day of his presidency, or they'd have to hide him so he didn't have to talk too much. And so I found it profoundly troubling. He's been my guy, throughout the whole thing, and his ideological position is my ideological position, and I think in his attitudes towards people who are different from him politically, which is kind of our biggest charge these days in this election, biggest challenge. I think he's got that right, and he's making the case that he could work across party lines, but he cannot. He can't debate. He can't. He's just lost too many steps. What was it? Peggy Noonan said he couldn't. It was something like, her phrase was something like he can't untangle his thoughts. You know, he can't follow the logic of his own thoughts. And so I don't know what I'm going to do, and I don't know what I think the Democratic Party should do. You know, I read an article today that argued, I've said this wasn't the case, but argued that somebody else other than Biden, and you know, and the article said Hillary Clinton. You know, I'm not sure I think that would work, but somebody else other than Biden should get the nomination. You know, he should bow out. People should pressure him to bow out, and then whoever that person is should pick Barack Obama, to be their running mate. And people have asked me in class, well, could Obama be the vice president? And this article says that the Constitution says, and I'm going to have to go back to it, says no, the 22nd Amendment says nobody can be elected president more than twice. Doesn't say anything about vice president. All right, so I mean, I don't know about that. But then later in the day, and I mean, I was texting back and forth with my buddy Coach Timms that I told you about. You know, later in the day, Cuomo gave his like update, his COVID update, and he was so good and so sharp, you know, and so concise. At one point, somebody said, you know, the numbers of new cases and deaths are declining, but we've still got thousand people died. Would you say, you know, can you really say you've been successful just because the numbers are declining? He said, well, I've done my best, period. You know, question handled. You know, it's up to you. You know, I've done my best. 5 words. You know, didn't get lost. You know, and command of the details. So, and then you get the federalism thing. You know, the federalism. You know, one of it's policy labs. We've talked about that. The different states' approach to things, Georgia versus Michigan, and so forth. But also training for chief executives, and so you can just kind of compare chief executives. And to me, Cuomo's just been far and away the most impressive. And you know, I think you can kiss about possibilities of Kemp ever getting to run for president goodbye. You know, I don't think this has turned out good for Kemp. Now I may be wrong. You know, I'm wrong a lot. I'm wrong so very often. I've been wrong so many times this year. But everything's back in flux for me. You know, I read an article. I've read 2 articles that I really liked. And one was by a never Trump Republican who said, you know, the Republicans, a conservative, pro-life conservative, does have a choice. You know, did have a choice. It wasn't between Trump and whoever the Democratic nominee was going to be. It was between Trump and Pence. You know, during the impeachment process, they could have supported impeachment, and they could have had, you know, somebody, a traditional conservative, but they picked Trump, and so they, you know, he was going after those folks. But the lesson I drew from it was, if you're profoundly troubled by your party's nominee, you don't get to say, well, the other side's worse. And I was nodding my head when I read his article. Now, I read another article. It's also by a conservative guy. What's his name? I'll get you the names of those guys. But at any rate, you know, he was saying that, you know, he thought Biden was a really flawed candidate, but he was still going to vote for Biden because Trump. So I don't know. You know, I mean, I'm unsettled. Okay, 2 more things. I'm also unsettled that so far I haven't read an article talking about how bad Biden was. You know, there's a lot of articles about it, but I mean, no articles just talking about how incompetent he was. And I'm a Biden fan, I always have been, but I just don't think he's up to it. So then what do? You know, what does my party do? And then, but here's something good. You know, conversely, I think it's like the policy process, right? Me Too is going to become mainstream. Me Too, properly understood, is going to become mainstream, right? So you think about the policy process, or let's talk about it for a second, then we'll go back to policy process. for the longest time, men could, behave badly, and if a woman, talked bad about a public figure, she was going to get shamed, and she couldn't say anything. And the John Kennedy stories are just the worst, the worst, and strange because he was such a cautious person as a politician, such a reckless person in his personal life. So that's changing, and that's a good thing. That people who are the victims of something awful can speak out and expect it to be heard. All right, and so they hear, but the phrase that Biden was using and others in the Me Too movement, believe all women. All right, well, a number of the articles coming out have said, well, Biden now says, believe all women unless I'm the one being accused. And then all of a sudden, Democrats and Alyssa Milano and other Me Too activists are suddenly in favor of due process. All right, so that's hypocritical, right? Because they're in favor for them. They want for them what they would deny to others. They want for Biden what they would deny for Kavanaugh in the Kavanaugh confirmations. But the moral of the story is there does need to be due process. That someone needs to be able to speak out, be taken seriously, initially, given the benefit of the doubt, and so inclined to believe that there's something to the accusation, but then also look at the evidence and try to get it right. Try to get the judgment right. And it doesn't have to be guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, because this person's not on trial about to go to prison. But guilty, like in a civil suit, the standard is preponderance of evidence, meaning, do I think they're probably guilty? Is the evidence more for them being guilty or more for not guilty? And so we are arriving, it seems to me, at a consensus that, guys don't need to be able to do whatever they want to, treat women any old way, treat them however they want to, and laugh about it, laugh it off, because boys will be boys. And Martin Luther King, Ted Kennedy, the Kennedys, Clinton, obviously, so many guys. And Biden's kind of of that generation, so that makes me nervous. I kind of think he did it. There's there's evidence against it, and it's a long time ago, yada yada yada, but I kind of think he did it. Does that mean, is there enough evidence for me to say I think he ought to step? Well, you have, I kind of think he did it, plus he's so incompetent. He's so inarticulate. So, I do hope the party searches for somebody else. I still don't want somebody way left, but I could have a situation where I write in Abraham Lincoln. I just don't know. I don't know. Bruce Springsteen, one of y'all. Who knows? Somebody I'm impressed with that particular day. Dr. Fauci. I might write in Dr. Fauci. All right, but let's go with the policy process. So remember, the policy process, first step was an item gets on the agenda. There's a problem, and everybody admits there's a problem. So then you have this proposed solution to it. And generally speaking, there's like an executive order, or Congress passes a law. In this case, a law hadn't been. What has been done? Here's what's been done. This has been raised as a problem. So the Obama administration really tied the funds that a college gets from Title IX to getting tough on sexual assault. And believing the accuser. And again, and the guy, I read an article about this. The guy leading the charge on this was Biden. And you've just got direct quotes saying, you got to believe the woman. If she says it, it must be true. All right. So you've got the inconsistency there. All right. So that's the original solution. But remember, and so that, that didn't require a law, because there's already Title IX. That was kind of the way the law was implemented. So it's kind of it's a rule. It's a bureaucratic rule. So that's the policy change that was made. All right, but then when you carry out the policy change, the law, whatever it is, and then often, regularly, you had situations where people felt like someone who was accused of a crime was not afforded fair due process, especially if it's a college kid, an inarticulate college kid. who doesn't really know how to stand up for himself. Well, Dr. McKenzie, what about the girl? That's right. That's right. The girl didn't know, the girl's trying to figure out how to stand up for herself. But I mean, kids are, they can't stand up for themselves very well in different ways. And so now the Trump administration, DeVos is the Secretary of Education, and she's making the case that we need to be more even-handed in the way that charges are responded to, that the charge is taken seriously, the woman's taken seriously, but that the accused has due process, can face the accuser and can make their case in a hearing at a college. And so that's the Aristotelian mean, right? That there's got to be due process, because if there's not due process, well, anybody can accuse anybody. And that's it for that person's reputation. The accuser's got to be taken seriously. Got to be given the benefit of the doubt. So you take both people. And so you're shooting for justice. And there's not hey, she's a woman, she had it coming, look how she was dressed, or whatever. And there's not well, if it's a he must be, by definition of his gender, toxic. But you try to be even-handed with it. So we're working towards, I've seen some phrases in paragraphs, take all women seriously rather than believe all women. Give the accuser the initial benefit of the doubt, and then look at the facts. Find the truth, which is something that Biden said. Yes, she's got the right to speak out, but we've got to find the truth. And so Me Too is kind of moving to the center a little bit. Elisa Milano had and I'll try to send that one to you because it's interesting. And I found her to be more articulate than the way she's been described by other media outlets as being. Other media outlets will describe her as being shrill and harsh and unthinking. And the article I read by her was nuanced. And so we were arriving in this policy process at a place of nuance because, really two lives are on the line. Not life, but their quality of life, and when something like this goes on. So we're getting there. As a society, we're working towards trying to find this balance between taking the accusation very seriously and making sure the accused has due process. We need both of those things. So I don't know if the assault charge to me is a deal breaker for Biden. I don't know why happened. I don't know. But that plus his incoherent answers. Will I still vote for Joe Biden in November? Well, probably bet $1 that, yeah, I probably will, but I don't know. And I'm certainly open to persuasion that it ought to be somebody else. And, you'll be getting this on Monday morning. I'm very interested in seeing what the third wave of articles are. Wave one was that, he finally, it was kind of like the interviewer got credit for a tough interview, and the day two, he's got some real problems. The inconsistency between his attitude towards others and what he wants for himself. And by the way, in the Bible, there's the story of the parable of the unmerciful servant, and the moral of the story is we all want justice for others, but we want mercy for ourselves. For others, we got to get tough. We can't be a sucker. For ourselves, wait a minute, you got to understand what I was going through in the situation. And so we got to be merciful to others and to ourselves, and if we're going to be, practice a severe justice on others, well, it needs to be severe justice on us too. So, it's all going on. I'm taking a break from COVID stuff. Just kind of got to wait and see what the opening does. I don't know yet. So see what the article, see what you said, compare what you said, your reaction to it, to my reaction to it, and then finally get an article or two and see how it stacks up against what we've been saying. Okay, let's see. I'm hoping that's about 20 minutes. My other video was 35 when I was hoping it was 20, so we'll see.